With turkey season closed here in the West, now is a great time to look back on some of these past hunts from 2026, reflect on the mistakes we made, and see what we could do differently. This spring was my toughest season to date. I messed up on a lot of birds and was never able to seal the deal on that tom that always seemed to be one step ahead of me. But in this video, I want to go back through my top 3 setups from this spring, go through each of them, watch the hunt back, and learn a little bit from each one in different ways I could improve and what I would have done differently. I think this video is going to be a good one, and hopefully we're all going to learn something, so stick around. All right, so starting off for our first setup here, this happened on April 16th. This was actually my first day out turkey hunting for my tags, and it was just a crazy day in the first place. I hiked 18 miles this day, and eventually I found a bird and got set up on him. And essentially I found this bird around 1:30 p.m. And when you find midday birds like these, a lot of times they're either going to be super hot and ready to come in because their hens have left them, or they're going to be super slow and they don't want to move because they feel like they're in a safe spot and they're just very reluctant to move. So it's all hit or miss. And as we'll see, this one was very hit. All right, we're just going to press play here and we'll go for it. Okay, so you can hear, I located him here. When I first heard him, he was like 300 yards away. He was pretty far. And so I thought, you know what? Let me just try to set up. He's probably not going to come in because he's far, but I'll just call a couple times, see what happens. And as it turned out, it came together pretty quick.
All right, I was walking back down, just a random spot, just yelped, and sure enough, Tom gobbled back.
So once I was in my setup, again, a common theme throughout this spring is just not giving setups enough attention. I actually had some good cover here, and I was right on the side of a road. And essentially, I didn't really think about the fact that when he comes to my setup and I have my decoy on the road, he's going to want to come to that decoy, and he's probably not going to come off the road since my decoy's on the road. That comes around to bite me in the butt, which was my mistake here. So I think the first lesson from this setup was just really making sure you have a good setup and understanding, like, okay, this is where he's going to come, this is where I want him to be, this is where my shot is, and just kind of thinking through all those things beforehand. Yeah, so I called again, he hammered back, and he was significantly closer at that point. So I'm like, all right, let's get ready here, hood up, gun up, and let's just get ready. So just a few moments later, I saw him up at around 150 yards, and he was by himself, and he was just coming straight for me. I think he saw my decoy once he got down to the road, and as soon as he locked onto that decoy, I mean, he was just on a string coming. You can imagine here, just, my nerves are just going crazy. I'm just watching him strutting in, gobbling in my face. At this point, he's 50 yards, and I knew that I was going to at least have an opportunity at him. But what I didn't realize until he was coming in was the whole debacle of, I have my decoy on the road. I can't shoot him on the road because this is a maintained road, and it just kind of fell apart from here. So at this point, he's around 40 yards from me. He's in range. Obviously, I'm going to wait for him to get closer. But internally, I'm freaking out because I'm realizing, okay, I can't shoot him on the road, and he's going to come to the decoy, and he's not going to want to lead the decoy. So I'm just trying to think through all my options as he's strutting in at 40 yards. And my mind was just going crazy, just freaking out while trying to not move. Obviously, incredible views. This is some of the best views I've got out of Tom. Giant Tom. I mean, he wasn't huge, but I think he probably had an 8 to 10 inch beard and just a really nice bird. So at this point, he is probably 7-8 yards from me. I mean, he is right there. And what saved me in this situation from him spotting me was the fact that my decoy and me were not in a line to where he was coming from. So if you have, like, let's say you're on a road and he's coming from straight away and your decoy is directly in between you and him, a lot of times he'll see you behind the decoy. But in this case, I had my decoy to the side. Even though it was on the road where it shouldn't have been, I had my decoy on the side of me. And so he never saw me because he simply wasn't looking in my direction. So eventually he comes around here and he actually jumps on top of the decoy. Look at this. Right here, he's gonna jump on top. Oh, he's sitting there. Oh yeah, so I also, I pulled my phone out because he started facing away. His head was covered by his tail. So I pulled my phone out and just started recording phone videos too, which was kind of crazy. And he should jump on that. Yeah, he's gonna jump on, look at this. And he's on top of the decoy. I've seen this happen on video, never seen it happen in person until this. And then at this point you're just like, okay, this is just ridiculous. Now I'm like, okay, obviously we're gonna enjoy the show here. But I'm just trying to think, okay, what is my plan for how I'm going to kill this bird? Because I'm not going to shoot him on the road. So he sits in this decoy for like 15 minutes, I think. And so time lapse in here, Tom on decoy, 14 minutes. He's just sitting there. Eventually, I'm like, okay, I have to do something. And so what my plan was, is I was just going to get up, try to just push him off a little bit. He was going to see me, obviously, start walking up or running up the hill, and then I was just going to walk across the road and shoot him that way. And as we see here, it just didn't work out. The main problem was I was just way too close to him for it. So you can see him, he's starting to walk away. He's actually leaving now. This is when I get up, and you can see it just went. Okay, let's talk about what went wrong. So, the main problem was I shouldn't have put my decoy in the road. And I talked about it in this video quite a bit. If I had put my decoy even 3 yards closer to me in the grass here, he would have came all that distance. I know he would have with how hot that Tom was. And I would have been able to harvest that bird that way. It was a really tough lesson. At the end there, things just fell apart, you know. Getting up on a bird like that, like, I don't even know what I was thinking. I think it was just all adrenaline. Obviously, that bird is not going to, he's not going to slowly walk. Like, when he sees a guy stand up 10 yards from him, he's going to fly. That's just what they're going to do, you know. And so he started flying, and it was one of those situations, do you want to take a flying shot at a Tom? And it's just like, I don't want to do that, you know. So I cut my losses, and we kind of let that bird go. It was a really tough lesson. I was pretty frustrated. You guys can roast me in the comments for that one. That was the dumbest thing I've ever done in my entire life. All right, so moving on to our second hunt. This happened on April 29th. So this was a couple weeks later. Went out by myself again, and we did another big day. I think we did about 12 miles. I got on some birds early, was never able to close the deal there. Just kind of messed around with them. Eventually found 2 birds midday again, and they were very far from me. I located them from this little kind of knob here, and I could see across the valley, and they were way down this hill, way up the other side, and then on the other side. And so I decided I was going to go for them. So started hiking down, got up in there, and located them again, and I heard them at probably 150 yards, so not crazy far, and I decided to make a setup. I did have a little bit of weather come in once I made the setup, so I actually threw a raincoat on. That was kind of a mistake as well, because, you know, when you're setting up on a turkey, their eyesight is one of their strongest, it's their strongest sense besides hearing. And so being blended in is really important. And so when I have, you know, just a solid color of a raincoat on, that's going to stick out a lot more than, say, a camo top. And so in the moment, I thought, you know, it was one of those situations, again, where I wasn't thinking about it. But just right off the bat, what I would have done differently is I would have just put a camo top over my raincoat. So essentially, these birds were a little quieter. They're a midday bird, and like I said, a lot of these birds in midday will be super hot or they'll be super quiet. And these ones were kind of the opposite of that other bird, where they were not coming in fast. They were coming in feeding, they were coming in slow, coming in walking, not strutting. And so you just kind of have to go with it and just do some soft calling and just slowly bring them in. Calling aggressive to slow moving birds like this doesn't really work that well. And so sure enough, I just kind of really slow called. This setup in all was over an hour, you know, where I was just being more patient. And eventually I started to see some heads moving around 50 yards and they started drifting my way. So I'm right on the side of this ridge, and they are kind of side hilling up the ridge towards me. And so at this point, I'm realizing there's 2 birds. I see in the front it's a Jake, and I see in the back it's a Tom. So obviously I'm trying to kill the Tom. So I say, okay, I'm not gonna shoot the Jake. I'm gonna try to wait for the Tom. The problem with this situation is that Tom they just tend to be smarter than younger birds, you know, and so they come in slower. They're a little harder to fool, and especially when you don't have a good hide and you don't have, you know, camo on top, things can go wrong a little easier. So at this point, the Jake is The Jake's only about 15 yards. He's in range, and I'm just, like, I could shoot the Jake, but I'm just waiting for that Tom. And the Tom is about 25 yards, so, you know, he's in range as well. The problem is he's just behind trees for me. And so, you know, I'm not taking that shot. I'm going to wait till I get a clear shot. And so I was just patient with him. So here, the Tom comes out, and he's at 35 yards here. And I didn't want to take that shot. I had a clear shot to him, but it was just a far shot. You know, and I felt like I could wait and he was going to come closer, so I decided to wait. So at this angle right here, it looks like there's a lane into the bird. And from the way the camera was positioned, it was a lane. But you got to remember, I'm slightly, probably 3 feet to the right. And so I still have branches in my way, even though that Tom was in view straight from the camera. And so he's 20 yards at this point, and I'm just waiting for him to cross because he's about to get where that Jake is. And at this point, the Jake was close. I mean, the Jake was probably around 10 yards. And as this second Tom is coming in, I'm noticing that Jake is starting to get antsy, right? He's starting to kind of see something uphill from him. And so the Jake putts a couple times right here. You can hear him putting right there. And so the Jake turns around and starts walking away. And it's obviously, as soon as that Jake starts putting, the Tom's going to walk away too. And so they both start walking out. And they weren't crazy spooked. They weren't running or anything. They were just kind of slowly walking away. And as we see here, that Tom crosses at around 35. I think it was 38 yards. And I decided to send one. And here we go. It's probably 40 yards realistically. Shot. And it didn't go well. So I'm shooting a 20 gauge. And so when you have a 20 gauge and it's 5 shot out of a 20 gauge. And so I patterned this gun, and I know that I can hit consistently at 30 yards. That's about the range that I'm comfortable with. So to take a 38-yard shot is a poke. And essentially the way a shotgun works is you have a pattern. And so when it first comes out of the barrel of the shotgun, your pattern is small, say, you know, something like this. And so as that pattern gets further and further away from the gun, it expands. And so by the time you are at 35 yards, you might have a pattern that's this wide, or sometimes like 6 feet, you know. I do regret taking that shot. If I could do the situation again, I wouldn't have taken it. It wasn't a high percentage shot, but I felt like I at least had a chance and I wanted to try it, but gambling and hunting don't really go that well together. So that was a lesson for me, and I'm not going to be taking a 38-yard shot with this gun again. All right, so let's talk about what I would have done differently. First off, I would have had a camo layer on. Having just a raincoat on with no face mask is not a good idea because turkeys have such good vision and they pick you off so quickly. That second Tom was very close to coming out. If he would have taken another 5 to 10 steps, he would have been in an opening for me, and that would have been about 15 yards, and I would have been able to harvest that bird. But that Jake in front just caught my movement. I think I was slowly starting to follow the Tom with the gun like this because I have to pan around to my right. And he just didn't like it, and so they busted out. So at this point, it's almost May. I'm feeling like, okay, I've messed up a couple times. I really need to, I need to put a bird on the ground. And so we'll move on to the second or the third hunt here. So this happened May 14th. So at this point, I have about 10 days left in the turkey season. Sure enough, got into my spot, and I only hiked 300 yards, and I think it was my second time calling. And sure enough, boom, gobble. So it's a little hard to pick up on the audio here, but he was probably 175 yards away, but the way the landscape was, he was below a little dip. And so just called a little bit, and at first I started hearing some hens. So I thought maybe it was just some hens that were going to come in. But sure enough, as soon as the hens started coming, I could see his tail fan just kind of peeking up behind the hill. And they came pretty quick. It was probably only 15 minutes after I sat down to when they were in there. So as we're looking at this footage here, let's look at where I am. I got a little map pulled up here. I'm on publicly accessible land. Anybody can walk on it. And it's a large property. Probably, I mean, the chunk is well over 2,000 acres. You know, but I'm since I'm starting from the parking lot and I'm 300 yards in, I'm not in to where I have unlimited access. I'm still near the private land boundaries. And so this bird was on public when I heard him, but he was just down the line from me. And when I heard him, you know, I was only 100 yards from the private line. And so I knew that, you know, I got to be careful because I don't want to have him come around on the private. You know, I want him to stay in the public. And so I set up right in the little bend of this logging road here. And as you can see here, there is a private shed on the private, and the shed, I said in the video, is 50 yards. It was probably 100 yards from me. It was pretty far. But nevertheless, I'm never going to shoot towards private buildings. That's just not something you do. That's unsafe, and I'm just not going to do it. And so when this bird is coming in, essentially there's this like little patch of kind of shrubs here, you can see right here. And so they were right on the other side of it. And I knew they were either going to come to the right of the patch of the shrubs, or they were going to come to the left. If they came to the left, I could shoot him and it'd be no problem. If they came to the right, he would be coming in between me and that private shed. And I knew that I wasn't going to take that shot. The reason I set up here is because when I first heard him, he was 175 yards. So I was like, okay, let me take my time. He gobbled again as soon as within 5 minutes of me calling the first time, and he was a lot closer. So it was one of those situations where you don't have time because you know he's coming. So if you don't get set, he's going to see you. And so I just found the first tree I could, not even looking at the setup. And again, as we're seeing here, through the last 3 setups, common trend for me this spring has been not thinking through setups and then having it bite you in the butt. But essentially, as we see here, he decides to come to the right, which is where I can't hunt or take a shot. It was one of those situations where I tried calling right then, getting aggressive with him, seeing if he'll come around. He gobbled back, but once he's seen me like that, you know, the deal is up, and you can see him, he's right here. And so he just started walking back, and I had to let that bird walk. You know, and you can see right here, this stump is where he was, and that shed's right there. So that's just not a safe shot to take, and you always got to prioritize safety in the woods. So let's talk about what I would have done differently. I would have taken more time on my setups. Through all 3 of these setups, that has been the main lesson. Like, when you hear a bird, I got to think through, okay, how am I going to envision this bird coming in? Because, you know, okay, like in this situation, he had 2 options. He was either going to come around to the left or he was going to come around to the right. In an ideal world, I would have set up actually closer this way, because that way I would have been able to point my gun parallel. And since that shed is actually a little bit, you know, above, if I was facing this way, the shed would have been behind me. Wouldn't have had to worry about it at all. I could have been shooting parallel to the property boundary and still be 75 yards from the private line and be fine. So I would have set up on that hill a little bit better. But when you're rushed like that and you got a bird coming in, it's just hard to make a good setup. All right, so those were 3 of the more exciting setups I had over the spring. This is the first year I haven't killed a bird. But I wanted to do a video like this because I think it is good to at least just like go back through all these setups and learn from them, you know? Just because, you know, I didn't harvest these birds doesn't mean it's not a cool hunt. I appreciate each one of these hunts I did. I think if I had to choose my favorite, it would definitely be that first one with that bird coming in to 10 yards and sitting on my decoy for 15 minutes. We're gonna wrap this one up here. I hope you guys have learned something from this. Please stick around, and we'll see you guys next week. I'm out.